The movie opens up with a pixelated video game scene where two characters are fighting and falling from a height. Then it switches to our main character, Chelios, falling from a helicopter and crashing onto a car in the street. He bounces off the car's roof and lands in the middle of the road near a junction. As soon as he lands, a group of Chinese henchmen quickly pick him up and put him in a van. Later, when Chev wakes up, he's in a makeshift hospital and he sees doctors removing his heart. Right then, a man named Johnny Vang enters the operating room and does something gruesome. He drops ashes from his cigarette into Chev's heart, which annoys the doctors. They quickly send Johnny out of the room and replace Chev's heart with an artificial one to keep him alive until they can take his other organs. It turns out the doctors are working for Johnny, who is an organ smuggler. After the heart transplant, Chev falls unconscious. In the next scene, a woman checks his body temperature in a peculiar way. She uses a thermometer between his legs, waking him up. "Now let me see. Oh yes, it's very hot down there." After a while, Chev overhears two doctors discussing taking more of his organs, including his private parts. This infuriates him.
"Oi, no one's taking my dick and balls,"
prompting him to beat up the doctors. He then notices a yellow battery pack attached to his waist but keeps it on and leaves the room. Naked, he wanders around the building until he finds clothes in a hooker's apartment. What? After he puts them on, he leaves the place. Johnny's men quickly follow him outside and point a gun at him. However, Chev manages to defeat them with relative ease. This is Statham in his prime, after all. He then forces one of them for information, and the guy reveals that Johnny has his heart. He also discloses that Johnny can be found at the Cypress Social Club. Following this, Chev enters a random car, hotwires it, and sets off to find his heart. While driving to the Cypress Social Club, he starts feeling weak and notices a warning light on the battery that's powering his artificial heart. This makes him anxious, so he decides to pull some wires out of the car and use them to recharge his heart's battery. Once he's done, the energy returns, and he accelerates towards his destination. During the drive, Chev makes a call to his doctor friend, Dr. Miles. He then reveals his predicament of having an artificial heart and asks for a solution to keeping it charged. This surprises Miles, and he explains that artificial hearts don't last for long. If the battery runs out, Chev will only have an hour to live. Miles then advises him to keep his body charged and find his real heart as soon as possible. As Chev gets closer to the Cypress Social Club, he encounters two mobsters who challenge him to a car race. However, he refuses the challenge and simply asks for directions to the club. Unfortunately, in a brief moment of distraction, Chev crashes his car, which leads to the loss of his heart's battery system. With no way to recharge, Chev asks the mobsters to juice him up.
"Juice me up, daddies."
This of course confuses them, but they decide to comply anyway. They follow his instructions and Chev connects the jumper wires, one to his chest and another to his tongue. Surprisingly, the high voltage jolt charges his heart and greatly boosts his physical abilities. He can now run like a horse. After a while, Chev finally arrives at the club. At first, he unintentionally rescues a hooker named Rhea from an abusive customer. He then goes inside the club to find Johnny, but the mobster manages to escape by jumping over the fence. Meanwhile, Rhea becomes smitten with Chev as she considers him her protector. Our guy tries to ignore her, but his interest is quickly piqued when she claims to know where Johnny is. She then takes him to a place called the Nude Girls Club. Creative. Inside the club, the owner Chico is violently interrogating Johnny, demanding to know where Chev is. At first, Johnny won't talk, but when Chico harms one of his men, he speaks up. Just then, Chev enters the club and sees his ex-girlfriend Eve performing a pole dance. Her character wasn't treated misogynistically enough in the first one, so they doubled down. They share a kiss, but Rhea interrupts their moment, claiming that she's Chev's new girlfriend. This leads to a fight between the two girls, in which Eve emerges victorious. At the same time, Chico arrives at the scene and spots Chev. Delighted, he orders his men to attack and capture him alive. However, Chev is not going to give up so easily. He pulls out a gun and a deadly shootout ensues between the two parties. Somehow, Chev manages to defeat all of the goons, but Chico manages to escape from a back door. Chev then questions one of the goons about why their leader wants to catch him. The guy explains that it's not Chico, but another gangster, El Huron, who wants him dead, although they don't know why. Furious, Chev shoots the guy dead and leaves with Eve. Unfortunately, when he steps outside the club, he's attacked by a group of police officers who start beating him up. During the fight, Chev's artificial heart's battery drains. fades. But when one of the officers tases him, it recharges again, giving him extraordinary powers. He then fights back and escapes in one of the officers' cars with Eve. Unbeknownst to them, there is a hooker in the back seat. Apparently, hookers are everywhere. After a while, Chev uses Eve's mobile phone and contacts Dr. Miles to update him on his situation. The latter claims that if he can find his real heart, they can put it back in his chest. At that moment, the hooker reveals that she knows where Johnny is. She explains that he has a box with him and is likely at the horse racing track at Hollywood Park. Hearing this, Chev drives towards the horse racing track.
I know how to run like a horse. I can find it.
But unfortunately finds himself in the middle of a protest rally led by a group of, you guessed it, hookers, demanding equal rights. Complicating matters, another group of police officers arrives at the scene. In response, Chev quickly flees the area, abandoning the car. In the next scene, he runs to a nearby park and encounters two boys who are using an electric collar on their dog. He confronts the boys, accusing them of animal mistreatment. Chev then takes the electric collar and places it around his own neck to recharge his heart. Later, the police arrive to arrest him, but the dog attacks one of the officers, giving Chev the opportunity to escape. However, he ends up surrounded by more police officers from all sides, with no further means of escape. At that moment, someone who looks like Chev's late friend Kylo arrives on a motorcycle and stops in front of him. He asks Chev to get on the bike and drives him away from the police. However, this mysterious guy has some nervous habits, and he ends up crashing the motorcycle, because of course he does. After recovering from the crash, the guy introduces himself as Venus, Kylo's twin brother. He reveals that he's on a mission to exact revenge for his brother's death. In response, Chev says that he has already taken out everyone involved in Kylo's death, except for a guy named El Huron. He then asks him for directions to the racetrack and heads there. Unfortunately, as he arrives at the place, his heartbeat starts to drop, so Chev calls his friend for help. Miles quickly comes up with a solution and says that Chev can recharge his heart through friction. This means he has to rub his skin onto another person. I wonder if he's going to have sex now. Chev follows the suggestion and tries it on a few people at the racetrack, but faces criticism and pushback. Fortunately, Eve notices him in the crowd and comes to his aid. They share an intimate moment on the racetrack while the crowd cheers them on. After Chev is totally rejuvenated, he leaves his girl and rushes to find Johnny. Unfortunately, the mobster once again manages to get away in his car. Following this, when Chev encounters trouble with the security, a Chinese gangster named Don Kim comes to his rescue in a limo. Inside the limo, Chev asks Don Kim about his stolen heart, and the latter explains that a triad leader named Poon Dong has it. Wow, this movie's from another era. He was in desperate need of a heart transplant, and that is when he found out about Chev's ability to escape death. So he paid his men a large amount of money to retrieve his heart. Hearing all of this, Chev questions why Don Kim saved him right now. The gangster lets out an evil grin and reveals that he is actually going to deliver him to Poon Dong. This obviously doesn't sit well with our hero, and he ends up killing Don Kim and his entire squad. After this, Chev leaves the crashed limo and goes to an electric grid. He grabs the high voltage power supply with his bare hands and recharges his heart. Meanwhile, Venus calls his friend Orlando to help track down El Huron. On the other hand, Chico reports his failure to El Huron, who cruelly punishes him by forcing him to cut off his own nipples. No use crying over spilt milk. Next, while driving, Chev spots an ambulance and jumps in, asking the paramedics for an extra battery to recharge his heart. They manage to find one and assist him in connecting it. Right then, Chev spots his enemy Johnny Vang on the street. So he jumps from the moving ambulance and hides behind a car. In the midst of this, Rhea tries to get Chev's attention from the other side of the road, but gets hit by a car. This alerts Johnny of the danger and he attempts to escape. However, this time, Chev eventually catches up to him and beats his ass. He then takes the red box from Johnny, hoping it contains his heart. However, it turns out to be something else. Enraged, Chev leaves Johnny on the ground and calls his Dr. Miles. The latter, who has many underground connections, has received information about the heart. He reveals that the organ was transplanted into Poon Dong 3 weeks ago, and it's functioning well. Miles then promises to help Chev find Poon and mentions that his girls are on the case. After the call, Chev tries to get information from Johnny, but Chico arrives and shoots him to death. They then knock Chev unconscious and put him in a car trunk. Meanwhile, Poondong is seen parading around the city, making sure his last days are the best. At one stop, he is approached by a lovely lady who turns out to be Miles's assistant. She cleverly seduces him and takes him to a secluded house. There, Miles is waiting for Poondong, ready to extract his heart. In the next scene, Chev is brought to El Huron, who reveals that he's the third Verona brother. For some context, Chev killed the other two Veronas, Ricky and Alex, in the first part. This is why El Huron is gunning for revenge. He threatens to kill Chev and removes his new battery pack, but he wants it to be a spectacle, so he takes him near the pool. There, Chev sees Ricky's severed head inside a tank with machines. El Huron then explains that he kept his brother alive artificially so that he can see Chev's demise. The gangsters then start whipping him brutally and almost finish him off, but Orlando, Venus, and Rhea show up in the nick of time, leveling the battlefield. In the midst of the chaos, Chev breaks open Ricky's tank and kicks his head into the swimming pool, but at the same time he starts slowing down due to low power. When he sees no other alternatives, he tries to recharge his heart by climbing an electric pole. As soon as he touches the live wires, he gets electrocuted so horribly that he is set on fire. But despite this, he still manages to beat up the enemies. He also kills El Huron and dumps his lifeless body into the swimming pool. At this moment, Rhea arrives, and Chev, in a hallucinogenic state, mistakes her for Eve and tries to hug her. Unfortunately, he ends up setting her on fire, causing her to run away in pain. Chev's body is still burning, and his face starts to melt. Regardless, he is full of energy. He walks towards the camera and shows his middle finger, probably to his enemies.
That's right, fuck you.
In the final scene, Chev is in a severely deteriorated state, and Doc Miles tries to re-implant his heart. Eve watches the procedure, and it seems like a failure, as Chev doesn't respond. However, after everyone leaves looking disheartened, he miraculously opens his eyes, and the movie ends. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.